Hello, this is Leslie Walker-Hirsch, and today I'm talking with attorney Ann Treimanis. Not only is Ann an attorney in Connecticut, she's also a professor and an author and mother of four children, including Eva Eason, who is a young woman with Down syndrome. How are you today, Ann? I'm glad you could meet with me.
Thank you, Leslie.
So how would you describe your legal practice?
Okay, my practice is focused on special education matters and disability discrimination. I represent students and their families. I never represent the Board of Education. Lately, I have been representing LGBT students who are being discriminated against.
Boy, that's quite an undertaking, and I'm glad it's in good hands with you. Have you ever had any cases that involve intellectual disability and sexuality issues?
Many, yes. Many of my clients do have intellectual disabilities. And the most common issues include first, including students with intellectual disabilities in general education classrooms, successfully including them. Next, I make sure that my students get appropriate evidence-based, research scientific-based reading programs so they can become proficient decoders. And next, they have many sexuality and relationship issues. I'd like to make clear that sexuality isn't just sex. I guess you know that.
I hope everyone does by now, dear.
The National Council on Adolescent Sexual Health, NCASH, they had a definition that I can quote. It's, quote, sexuality is often misperceived as referring only to sexual behavior like masturbation or intercourse and reproductive health. But sexuality is more accurately characterized by broad physical, emotional, and social development. They go on to say that sexuality has to do with anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, identity, personality, roles that are manifested through our thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and relationship with others. So, should I tell you about my cases?
I'd love to hear about them, and I'm sure everyone else would too.
Okay, so last year I had a high school young woman who was very attracted to her teacher, who was the hottest teacher in the high school. And what she did was she took her lunch bag and she dropped it in front of the high school teacher on purpose so she could bend down, pick it up, and give him a little view of her underwear, which was sort of sexy. And she also asked him out. So he reported this behavior to one of the administrators who got really upset, and he said that the student was a pervert and she was going to be expelled and she was going to go to a specialized school, even a therapeutic residential school for this deviant sexual behavior. I guess he was still one of those folks that thinks that students with intellectual disabilities, are not sexual. They're eternal children. But anyway, what I explained to the administrator was that all of the girls were hot on this teacher, but they had the social skills and they had the intelligence not to let the teacher know that, and they spent their time fantasizing about him and giggling, but with the other girls, not when the other teacher was listening. And that this was really a teaching opportunity and required more education for the students and not punishment. Okay, so another case, actually, this next case I have all the time, constantly, and that is that the students with an intellectual disability has a crush on another student, with or without an intellectual disability. And remember, my students on my watch always become good readers and writers. So they are very involved with social media. And in this case, they might send repetitive text messages to the other students, or they might have Facebook postings. And what happens is that the receiver of these messages If they're on wanted messages, they might report that student to the school or tell their parents who call the school and they want the students, my client with an intellectual disability, to have some kind of consequence. And the way I protect my clients is to make sure that there's a internet safety goal in the IEP.
So important.
Yeah. The IEP is that document that every student receiving special ed services has that spells out the supports and services that the student's going to require. Then there are more serious cases. Recently, I had a client who was sexually abused in the bathroom, and she didn't tell anybody. She went home. Her mother saw something was a little off, but she didn't say anything. And while she was being abused, one of the guys told another guy to, take pictures. And then he walked around the school bragging about what he did to some other students and showed the pictures. And luckily, one of the other students was very disturbed about what he saw. So he went to the victim's house and he said to the mother, I was in school today and somebody showed me, some photographs and, explained what happened. The mother was, of course, shocked and upset and called the girl over. And she said, don't worry, mommy. It didn't hurt. It happens at school. It's happened at school before.
Oh, boy.
So this is just one example of why students, have to learn how to become self-advocates and have to report unwanted or inappropriate sexual behavior. And really, what is that behavior? So it all comes down to education.
It really does. Well, what kind of legal complications might result if sexuality education is not available in the special education program and kids are just included in the general health class where a lot of the information goes past them very quickly and where they don't get a chance to really practice and rehearse what they would do? What are the complications that can result from that situation, which is universal almost?
Well, the health class really should be modified so they become meaningful.
Could you speak up just a little?
The health classes, like every class, should be appropriately modified so the student has meaningful access to the general education curriculum, including health. But sometimes one health class is not enough. So the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which is the federal law that schools are mandated to follow, it's better known as IDEA 2004, it requires that the school provide FAPE, which is free, appropriate public education. So I would ask, is it appropriate for this student with an intellectual disability to receive explicit, intensive teaching in healthy relationships, dating, sexuality? And if the answer is yes, then the school is obligated to provide it because that's what's appropriate. So, if they don't provide an appropriate program, then the families have their procedural safeguards. They have options. They can take the school to mediation or due process or file complaints. But it's appropriate for those students with ID, intellectual disabilities, to get this training. I had a student with Down syndrome, I think it was a couple months ago, and she was texting provocative messages for someone. Well, that someone decided to call the police. And the police arrived, and I said to the officer, we're going to have increased school services, appropriate school services, and the family would do their job by supervising internet use. And that's how I was able to protect the students from being in the juvenile justice system.
It really does take a village, doesn't it? Not just a family and a school and a neighborhood and the police and other students and so many ways to support students in this area as opposed to just punishing them. I'm glad it's in such good hands. So what should a parent do if their child is not getting the kinds of services that they know they're entitled to? Here in New Mexico, we have a number of parents that are very reluctant to call attention to themselves in the schools by complaining because they are not documented here. But what can parents do besides complaining to law enforcement or complaining to the school if their child is not getting what the family believes they need in this area?
Well, it's been my experience over the years is that the students that get the best programs are those that have the most empowered parents. And many parents are educated today because they attend conferences, they join listservs, they go to support groups, they pray to Lord Google for answers. They read books like yours, The Facts of Life and more.
And thank you for that plug, Ann.
Well, it's a great book, and unfortunately, there are not enough books in this area, that are available. So these educated parents understand that sexuality should be addressed in the IEP, that these skills need to be taught at school, in addition to at home. So at a minimum, I am certain that every child with an intellectual disability should at least take advantage of the Circles program. That should be taught to the children.
Another plug, thank you.
Yeah, you invented that, Leslie.
Co-invented with Markland Champagne as the co-creator with me.
Mm-hmm. So if you want to find out if your sexuality education class is appropriate, there is an organization called SIECUS, SIECUS, which is the Sexuality Information and Education Council of the United States. And what they do is they have actually a pretty hefty set of guidelines on what these programs should look like. But it comes down to every program should have six big parts of it. And one is human sexual development, 2, relationships, 3, personal skills, 4, sexual behavior, 5, sexual health, which includes safety, rape, harassment, molestation, and 6, society and culture. And the sad fact is that some students never get sexuality training until the unfortunate incident occurs, and that's when people sit up and
a lot of water under the bridge by then.
Yes, true.
Oh boy. So, Anne, how could people get in touch with you if they want to ask a specific question about their own child or a child that is in their classroom?
Okay, everyone is welcome to email me at attorneytreimanis@gmail.com, or you can check my website for resources at spedlawyers.com. When I'm looking for answers, one of the things I do and what I recommend my parents do is go to rightslaw.com. Pete Wright has an amazing website that doesn't just focus on sexuality. That would be like 5 pages out of his thousands and thousands of pages. But he teaches parents how to be good advocates for their children, and then hopefully those children will see their parents advocating for them and grow up to be effective self-advocates. It's sort of like, if I'm not a medical doctor, but if my child had leukemia, I can guarantee you that within 3 months I would be a cancer expert. And so for parents, they have to understand that if their child has a disability, they need to become experts in that disability, and they need to become experts in the laws that protect their child. And this is the hand you were dealt, and you have to play it the best you can.
Good advice. So I think I've asked you a lot of questions, and boy, you have certainly covered them thoroughly. Is there anything that I've missed that you want to add to this?
Sure. There's one resource that I have sent some parents to is there is a woman, Terry, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, Kuwenhoven. You've probably taught her everything she knows, but just
hardly.
She has published numerous books. Her latest one is Boyfriends and Girlfriends. And before that, she had Teaching Children with Down Syndrome About Their Bodies, Boundaries, and Sexuality. So she has some good books out. They have the American Association of Sexuality Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. You can find an expert through that group. They maintain some kind of membership list online. I know that in this interview, I just focused on IDEA 2004, but I do want to mention that there are actually many laws that protect our kids. So if you don't mind, I'll mention a couple of them now.
Please do.
Okay, there's the Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, and that addresses disability discrimination. There's families should know that we do not have yet a national bullying law, but many states do have strong bullying laws, and so families should know what laws their state has in place for bullying. Sometimes bullying behavior rises to the level of disability harassment, and that's prohibited under Section 504 and under the Americans with Disability Act. There's also Title IX. So Title IX of the Education Amendments, we used to think about Title IX as that law that protected, it says that you can't discriminate someone on the basis of sex. So in other words, if the high school gave a little bit of money to the girls' sports teams and a ton of money to the boys' sports teams, that was a Title IX violation. And so now we use Title IX for other reasons. So if the kids are all on a class trip, your students, your child or my client with an intellectual disability is called a slut, it happens to be a girl, then not only am I going to cry that it's a bully, that she was bullied on the bus, but I'll also say that's a Title IX violation because she's being discriminated against because she's a female. Title IX protects pregnant or parenting students, and Title IX is also protecting transgender students, allowing that students to use the restroom that corresponds to his or her gender identity. So that's, it's another law that protects us. Overall, I would say that it's critical for parents, educators, and professionals to learn how to teach healthy sexuality and how to support healthy sexuality to children and to adults that have intellectual disabilities. And I am so flattered that you called me, Leslie, because you are a pioneer in this field, and I thank you for your work.
Well, thank you so much for spending part of your day with me and for the readers of the Facts of Life Plus newsletter. Thanks, Anne. I hope to see you again soon, and please say hi to Eva for me.
I will.
So long. Thank you again.